Thank you.
Going to work with the microphone, but that was a wonderful and very illustrative and beautiful talk. And we open up the floor for some questions.
Happy to answer questions. In the back there?
Hi, could you talk more about the cyclones and what we think they are and what we know about them, what we don't know about them?
Well, they're storms, obviously, and so for whatever reason, Jupiter likes to make cyclones. It likes to make, rather than having belts and zones, it's got all these swirly storms up near the pole. And what we're working on is what that tells us about the circulation deeper down and the energy flow in those polar regions. We're working on that.
Have you sold any?
Yes.
Yeah.
Going the other direction. Yeah. And it's interesting because they go both directions. But just the ones right around the pole, they're all cyclones. And they shouldn't actually theoretically be stable, but they are. And so obviously there's something that's, puzzling and that we have to figure out what we were missing in our theories. Yeah. Yes.
When people upload their images after processing them, is there any way to convey what alterations they made, say shifting the palette or
Yes.
stretching, compressing, erase the naming range?
Yes, we ask people, in fact, to share that with us. Tell us what you did, and some of the people that do that are actually very detailed, and like other people could probably recreate their steps. Some people not so much, they just say, oh, I enhanced the color. So it really, we don't have a standard. We take whatever people give us. But there's quite a range, and many people do say what they've done.
Question back
Question in the
here.
back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're next.
Yeah, you may have already answered this, but the yellow spot in Jupiter that's you could put the United States in.
Oh yeah, the Great Red Spot, yes.
What is this yellow spot? What is
It's a giant storm.
Oh, it's stone.
It is
Okay.
an enormous storm, and it's been around for something like 400 years, pretty much since telescopes were invented. It's been seen there in the atmosphere. And only recently has it started shrinking. So we're wondering, are we going to be, the generation that sees the Great Red Spot disappear? We don't know.
Thank you.
I hope not. Yes.
I do a lot of image processing.
Yeah.
And I have done some of the JunoCam stuff.
Oh, you have?
But I have not uploaded it.
Oh.
My question, well, is there a page that explains like what resolutions are acceptable, file sizes or file types?
There's a little bit of that on, I think when you click upload, actually, is when it tells you some of that. But we don't have very many restrictions that I can think of on size or anything like that. There's probably some size that's too large, but I don't know what that would be, because we've got some rather large images. Over here?
Question over here.
Are you guys?
What is the
Hello?
ring of pearls?
The string of pearls. Those are, the string of pearls. Those are anticyclonic white ovals, and basically storms, more storms. It's an atmosphere. And the string of pearls is interesting because it's sort of quasi-stable. They merge, they split, but they're always in that sort of latitudinal zone. And so they've also been seen for decades. Not like the Great Red Spot, which is hundreds of years, but certainly decades. Yes.
I did wonder about the string of pearls because it seems to be in the middle of the band that it's in.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas the Great Red Spot is kind of between a band and a zone. What do you think is the driver?
Yeah, it's kind of surprising that way because a lot of places where there's storms is where you've got winds going like this, and they're not there. So I don't really have an answer. I'm agreeing with you, and they're really weird.
The sizes seem to be similar. We have a
theory for that? Why those pearls, the size, are they very similar?
They are all very similar, so that's telling us something about the energetics in that latitudinal zone, I'm sure. But again, exactly what it's telling us is harder to figure out. I think it's certainly energy related, though.
Got one here?
So,
Yes.
how long will this satellite be orbiting and be able to take photos?
So our plan now is to go till 2022, and towards the end of the mission, the orbit is going like this. So as the orbit goes, the distant part goes south and the closer part goes north, those radiation belts we're going to get into as it goes this way, and particularly near the end. And so we're just not sure how much damage the spacecraft can sustain. And so once we get into that phase of the mission, which is around orbit 30, we're going to be watching it very, very closely. And I know NASA will make us have a plan to actually ditch the spacecraft into Jupiter, just like we just did when we killed Cassini. And for the same reason, because there is an international law that says you cannot contaminate a place that could potentially host life with Earth life. And so we are required to dispose of our spacecraft unless it's clean to a certain level, this one is not. And because we don't want to accidentally crash into Europa, which we think could have at least be potentially capable of hosting life. So yeah, so in 2022, we'll be making this decision based on the radiation damage and how long we think the mission can last and when is the right moment to ditch it. But our science objectives we should be done by orbit 35. So at that point, we're ready to let go.
Thank you.
Actually, she just.
All right.
Yes.
Oh, another one
You
here.
showed the pictures that show red spot has shrunk in the last 20-some years.
Yeah.
Do we have detailed enough pictures to know if it has shrunk, expanded, and shrunk, expanded over the last 400 years?
So, no.
Okay.
We could probably say over the last 100 that it was sort of a sudden thing when it started shrinking. But whether it's a longer period of time, what it was like, 200 years ago, we don't have good enough data to say. Yeah.
Question about
This is a two-part question. First, did you do any temperature ranging, like from the equator to the pole and the differences? And second, was there any kind of radar looking into how deep some of the wells at the centers of these storms go?
Yes, we have, it's an instrument called the microwave radiometer. And it is, in fact, able to sense quite deep into the atmosphere. And we are seeing structure. And, but it doesn't have really good resolution. So when I say structure, I mean on the scale of the belts and the zones and the great red spot. But the smaller ones, like the question over here about the string of pearls, the data's not good enough to resolve those storms. So yeah, that's the microwave radiometer team is just, in hog heaven with their data. And they're starting to put out some results. And in fact, there should be some Nature papers coming out in the next month, I think, that will have some of their new results.
what about one last one?
I've got one here, and then I'll pick one over here. Yes.
How did you go about advertising to get the feedback that you did from the astronomers?
So the amateur astronomy community is actually amazingly well organized. And so if you just kind of get the word out to the astronomy clubs, and there's a whole